Legendary sports editor Bob Hammel passed away last Saturday night at 88 years old. His career spanned 30 years at the Bloomington Herald-Times, where he covered IU sports and authored the first of more than a dozen books. But as Pat Bean reports, the relationships he made and how he told their stories made him unique in the world of journalism. Most of the material for this story comes from our 2019 WTIU documentary on Bob, which is available on our website.
The thing about Bob Hammel is that in the reams and reams of copy he wrote for the Herald-Times, he never made the story about him. And he never took pot shots at coaches or players who he said he always saw as kids.
Second guessing was never a thing I like to do because it's such an unfair perspective. You say that what the coach didn't work. Well, by inference, you're saying that if he had done it this way, it would have worked. But how do you know that? How do you know that wouldn't have failed too?
And there's no second guessing Hammel's career. He was selected as the state Sports Writer of the Year at least 16 times and has been inducted into numerous halls of fame, including the Indiana Journalism Hall of Fame and the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
He was really driven to be accurate. He was driven to be fair, but I also will say, and I think anybody that ever read his stuff, he was driven to be positive.
Hammel was able to develop friendships with many national figures after arriving in Bloomington, including swimmer Mark Spitz, Congressman Lee Hamilton, entrepreneur Bill Cook, screenwriter Angelo Pizzo, and former IU basketball coach Bob Knight. His relationship with Knight began when he was hired by IU to coach in 1971 and lasted a lifetime. Hammel wrote Knight's memoir, Knight, My Story.
I'm smart enough to know when somebody's dumb and somebody's smart. And here's a guy that's a very intelligent guy. He obviously not only likes basketball, but he understands basketball. And I think that it wasn't too long after I came to Indiana that he became a friend, and a very good friend.
Hammel also opened the door for female sports writers in the early 1970s, hiring Tracy Dodds and Kristen Huckshorn. Both went on to national prominence and founded organizations that promote women in sports media.
40 years ago, there were almost no female sports writers in this country. And Bob Hammel first hired Tracy Dodds, who preceded me by about 2 years, and then hired me. That wasn't done back then.
His willingness to mentor young talent helped launch the career of a New York Times best-selling author who ventured into the Herald-Times newsroom for a meeting with Hammel while still a student at Bloomington High School North.
A few things really stood out there. One being how remarkably generous Bob was. He had no reason to give me this time. I also realized very quickly how serious he was about the craft of writing. I've never heard anyone talk about the craft with that level of exacting focus.
The main focus of Hammel's coverage was Indiana University football and basketball, which included traveling to cover Hoosier athletes and 5 Olympics. Hammel was inducted into the IU Athletics Hall of Fame in 2008 for his coverage, but an episode in the tumultuous late 60s, the IU football boycott by 10 African-American football players in 1969, left a lasting impression on him.
My carryover regret from that, and it's still true today, is that I didn't do more in an unprofessional way to step in and try to. I was one who could talk to them, and I was one who could talk to the football side, the administrative side, but I didn't do that.
Hammel moved to Bloomington for a job at the then Herald-Telephone in 1966 after brief stints at papers in his hometown of Huntington, Kokomo, and Indianapolis. And Hammel made it his home until his passing last weekend. His legacy will be a smart, funny, thoughtful man who reveled in celebrating sports success rather than piling on.
There's so much chance to athletics that I never was brash enough to think that I knew the answers. I just tried to report what happened.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Pat Bean.